It's been quite a journey getting to the place where we're actually having these conversations with pastors, but you, honestly, James, are one of the first people I thought about sitting down with and having a conversation, because as we've developed a relationship a lot since probably October, some of the conversations we've had have been really enjoyable and stimulating, and I honestly wished a lot of other people could have had these conversations with you. There's a lot of times when we're having a conversation, I'm like, man, you need to tell us you need to have these same conversations with other people in town, other leaders in town, because so much of what's on your heart is really what's important for the church right now. So welcome. Thank you. Now, thank you for inviting me into your house too. This is a great place.
Yeah.
And so you've had a very different journey than I have. I basically didn't step foot in a church before I became a Jesus follower, but you have had this journey where you were pretty much raised up in the church, and I'm sure that formed you in ways that probably not too many people realize. It's not like you're the only one who's ever had this journey, but it's been a different journey, especially in the very beginning. So maybe you could share with people a little bit about how you got to the place where you were in full-time ministry and how this path that you've been on may have influenced that decision.
I don't know if I start with like my parents being missionaries or if I fast forward from there, but my parents were missionaries overseas until I was 6, and so and then from there my dad pastored all through through me being a teenager.
Yeah.
Eventually landed in social work. So so for most of my life growing up, it was about hearing the Lord and then going and doing what He says. And it was, definitely presented to me in my family and then in my church experience that this is what everyone's doing. And I think probably everyone is doing that to some degree. But there was a real intentionality about hearing the Lord. And so even the summer before my senior year of high school, my dad encouraged me to take some time to fast and pray about my future. What am I going to do? So in spending some time in prayer and fasting, I felt a couple of things really clearly. I felt that I was not supposed to start applying to colleges, and I felt encouraged to get a job. So I had acquired early release from school. I was able to leave early in the afternoon, and I went and worked at Pacific Fiber Products as I cleaned their fab shop for that year. And at the end of my senior year of high school, I felt a call from the Lord to go and do YWAM. And so it was a good thing that I'd been working because I had some money saved up. And I went and spent some time overseas doing a discipleship training school with YWAM in Perth, Australia. And
which is the same organization your family worked with.
Yes, yeah. My parents were first generation YWAMers. I was a second generation YWAMer for a little while. Anyhow, I ended up coming back to town after that and feeling really strongly that I was going to get a job, work, save some money, and then I was gonna support myself on the mission field for a number of years off of my savings. So while I was doing that, I fell in love and got married, and my wife felt really clearly that she was called to go into working in the healthcare field, and we ended up feeling settled in her doing nursing school in Longview, and I just worked and helped her get through school for a number of years. So I was working full time at a local sanitation company, and all the while just really involved in ministry at the church that we were attending. So about a year after we got married, I was offered a job to be a part-time worship leader. And so I got a really humble stipend for leading worship at the church, along with a number of I was part of a team of worship leaders. And then I was really active, just serving in the youth group as a volunteer. And ended up running the junior high youth ministry as a volunteer when the youth group went through some leadership transitions, and then when the church went through some transitions, I was offered an opportunity to come on staff full time as their youth pastor. And so somewhere in the back of my mind, probably from the time I was in middle school, I'd always, I think, felt a call to ministry, and not necessarily like I heard the Lord say, James, you're called to be a minister, but I think I was raised to believe that everyone was called to be a minister, and I just couldn't see myself doing anything else. All of the other career options seemed fine, but what I loved doing was working with people. I loved studying. I loved church. I would just do church 7 days a week if I could. And so people that would do church 7 days a week probably should be pastors. So I worked as a youth pastor for about 5 years, and went through a lot of learning how to balance life and ministry. I felt like I was learning a lot, and my wife might beg to differ during that season. But after a period of time, I just really felt clearly that it was time to move on to something else. So after working as a youth pastor for around 5 years, I just felt a call from the Lord to do something else, and I had a friend who was looking to hire an associate pastor at his congregation in town, and ended up working over there for a couple of years, and I think really feeling that I would perhaps join the denomination that church was a part of, and that would be my future. And then as it came time to sort of make all of that official, of taking the vows of ordination and all of that, there was just a number of things that my wife and I just did not feel super at peace about.
Yeah.
And so it was my wife who said, well, maybe we should think of planting a church rather than joining this denomination. And
your wife?
Yeah, my wife said that.
Encouraged you to plant a church.
Yeah. Well,
did she have any idea what she was talking about?
No. If we would have known, it would have never happened. But that's probably how it is for every church planter. If you knew what you were getting into, you would never do it. And so, and I think for me, I had the church that I'd been a youth pastor at, and the church that I'd spent a lot of my years at growing up, they had planted churches before, and so in the back of my mind, there's this idea: this is just what leaders do in the kingdom, and this is a healthy way to grow the body of Christ. And so we, contacted a number of people, acquired the blessing of the churches that I'd worked at before, and ended up launching Renewal City Church in 2013, and that was that. I guess that was my journey to full-time lead pastoring. Well, I try to temper any of my sentiments about the American church with a global perspective,
which is different than most people.
Sometimes if I look at the American church, I can start to feel a little bit upset with how things are at. I really believe that the Lord sees things differently. Yeah. I don't think that Jesus is looking at any church and just wringing his hands with frustration. Right. If he could just come down from heaven and take a paddle to us, that's what he would do. I really believe that, yes, he would bring correction to all of our lives, but I think that he just loves us so much and is incredibly patient with our vices. And so I think he would even look at like maybe the political division in the current American church, and I'm sure he would shake his head. I'm sure he would have words of correction for us, but I think that he gets excited about every act of kindness, about every moment that someone is sharing their faith. He loves the fact that even amidst the current condition of the American church, we're still funding global missions on a level that nobody else is. Our hearts are being poured into relief work all around. So I want to think like he thinks. Yeah. I want to remember that it's not all bad. I want to be confident that He's working and moving and doing good things. I want to remember the good things that people have accomplished. The generation of the church that I think many people in my generation would say chased our generation out of church.
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite like that. I think many people left on their own, and at the same time, I look at what's been accomplished, faithfully carrying the torch in their generation, and especially as people in the generation that's getting ready to be done with their race are getting ready to be done with their race. I'm just so grateful for people who have gone before and served the Lord.
Yeah.
So maybe that was like a pat, like millennial answer. I said a lot of nothing, but
well, I don't know. I don't know where all the cynicism comes from. I don't know where all the criticism of the church comes from inside the church. You read the Bible and you know how Jesus thinks about his bride, and you kind of wonder, seems like we're being very harsh on someone, and I'm talking about the church, the global church, whatever. He seems to have a fondness and affection for them. I mean, he says himself, I'm the one who's building this thing.
Yeah.
And yet we can be so critical.
Yeah, we can.
And I love that. I love what you said about wanting to see things the way he sees that, because I think that's a real challenge for leaders in America. Maybe, I don't know what it's like outside the United States, but in America anyway, it's a challenge to be hopeful about the church.
Yeah. So you try to do these things. I don't know how great it's working, you know, especially over the last couple of years with COVID. I mean, it's not like there's more people at my church than anybody else's. It's not like we've experienced robust spiritual growth. I'm not ready to write a how-to book on any of it, but it does seem that if you want to get outside of your walls, you have to do less and you have to make less of sort of your church calendar.
Right.
You can't expect people to come down to the church 3 nights a week and get outside of the church walls. Right. It's sort of like there's only so much time in a day, and there's only so much relational capital people have to spend. And if you're trying to encourage church people to spend that capital in their lost friends and in their community, then the church community does seem to suffer for it. Yeah. And so I think even in our own congregation, there's adjustments we're trying to make where we're kind of reconciling this fact that we've been really trying to focus on being outside the walls, and I've been really focused in my role as a pastor of leading by example and involved in this and involved in that, and getting a second job just so I can be in the community in a different context and not, like yeast in the dough, unrecognizable, kind of incognito under the surface, and yet able to have an influence. And that doesn't add up to a strong congregational sense of who we are and what we're actually accomplishing, because so much of what gets accomplished doesn't go in the church newsletter. It's talked about over coffee,
That is so good.
And so wouldn't it be great to be a church community that is able to strike the balance between being others-minded and still having a strong sense of communal identity, still having a strong sense of belonging among its members? And I guess that's the next step, right? One, I really think that it was not and will never be a mistake to lean into relational methods and even relational structures for trying to build a healthy church.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we rethink our hospitality as a church? How do we rethink our first impressions? How do we rethink how we relate to one another and how we value, and what are we doing? I think that there is a real value on collaboration that younger people have, and I think if the church can get outside of their congregational walls, even to collaborate and to be together with the big C church, I think that would go a long ways towards opening the doors for, you know, some of these lost sons and daughters to come back home.
Yeah, yeah.
I really think so. And so I think the path forward is relational, and I think that's not just how do I make new people feel welcome in my congregation, but how does the church figure out to be the church that God's called us to be?
And we'll sit down again in another couple of years and see how things have gone.
Yeah.
See if our ideas of how things move forward are true, or
Yeah.
if God came up with another way of building His church that we didn't even see coming.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
James.
Thank you.
We really hope today's episode was helpful. You'll find more resources and content to connect with other community leaders by going to our website, citiservecowlitz.org. So, it's been a joy to walk with you, and we'll see you soon.